months ago, we did a brief video featuring Peter Karmanos Jr. We got such a great response from it that we decided we'd do it again. In fact, we're going to make a whole series called the SocialDiscussions. And I'm bringing along my friend Karen Dumas, who I've done lots of radio and television with. We're going to put good, fun, and challenging questions to a number of high-profile Detroiters and local celebrities. And we invite you to join in to the social discussions. So, where should we start? But with who else? The person who inspired us to do this, Mr. Peter. I want to say J. Karmanos, but I know there is no J. This is funny. Everybody thinks his name is Peter J. Karmanos, and there is no J. Peter Karmanos Jr.
No middle initial.
First of all, Pete, I have to say congratulations for your most recent accomplishment, the induction into the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Well, thank you very much.
Tell us a little bit about that. How does that feel?
I'm just trying to put together a speech, and everybody says, "Boy, you must be excited," and I said, "Yeah, I'm excited." But I'm also astonished, I'm surprised.
Why?
I'm humbled. Well, because you don't expect when your goal totals are none, assists none, penalty minutes none, that you're going to get into the Hockey Hall of Fame.
But you've done some, you have made some significant contributions.
We've done something very unusual, okay? Tom Thews and I started the CompuWare Sports Corporation, and it turned into a worldwide phenomenon as far as youth hockey is concerned. So
for those who don't know, would you explain that a little bit?
Well, we've had thousands of kids play on various age group teams, ranging from 7 to 16. And if you were to walk into a bar in Berlin and talk about hockey and say you had a son or a friend that played for CompuWare hockey, chances are they know what you're talking about. So Detroit CompuWare is famous worldwide because we put together such an unusual program. We had sets of such unusual parents that would devote their entire social lives to having their kids play the kind of hockey that the CompuWare kids played. We'd go and we'd win tournaments in every corner of the U.S. and Canada. It was just a very unique thing that happened and has continued for years and years.
Well, speaking of setting precedents, and you certainly set one for the city of Detroit, you believed in and invested in Detroit long before it became the popular or the cool thing to do. What do you think about the things that are taking place or appear to be taking place as it relates to the redevelopment of Detroit?
Well, I just hope everybody keeps in mind that we don't repeat some of the same mistakes that we've made in the past. Like having a totally segregated city, all right? Having the kind of tension between the police department and the people that lived in the city. At the same time, I want the city to be a lot safer than it ever was. Everybody should learn from the fellow that runs Wayne State's police department how to do it right. I believe that this is a progression that would have taken place anyways. We denied the kids in this area 2 or 3 generations of an urban experience, either because they were too poor or because they had moved out to the suburbs.
Speaking of moving to the suburbs, your new company, Mad Dog Technology, is in Birmingham. Will you do anything in the city of Detroit again?
Yes, absolutely. We're little puppies. When we get to be big dogs, we're coming back home.
So you have so much on your plate, Pete, all the time. People don't know half the things that you're involved in. What do you do to relax?
Sleep.
Do you sleep really though?
Yeah.
Do you sleep? You sleep well?
Yeah.
No insomnia?
No, no.
See, that's unusual because most people that are high performers have problems going to sleep.
Yeah, when you get to be old, you don't have any problems going to sleep.
Well, getting back to the relaxation thing, I do happen to know that your drink is vodka with no fruit, right?
No produce.
No produce.
produce.
Okay, that's kind of like that shaken, not stirred. That's James Bond. Pete is vodka, no produce.
No produce.
And then a good cigar, right?
Oh, yeah.
What
absolutely.
kind?
Well, these days I'm stuck on VSG Enchantments.
You know anything about that, Karen?
Nothing at all. But I do want to ask, will you be making a trip to Cuba anytime soon, speaking of cigars?
Well, Cuba's an interesting thing. You know, when I was a kid, me and all my buddies were waiting to go to Cuba. All right, and I was born in 1943, if you can do some arithmetic. By the time I turned 21, just before I turned 21, there was a thing called Bay of the Pigs, and we were shut out of Cuba for a long time. I'm looking forward to going back, but it won't be the same Cuba that we would have gone to in 1963.
Straight cigars. I want to ask you this, because you are so successful. Usually people always want to know what's your secret to success. What's the driving force that has contributed to your professional success?
Well, first of all, I really believe in teamwork, and I believe with working with what you have and not wishing you had something else, and then handling it from there. It's hard work. My definition of hard work, though, is not how many hours a day you put in. It's how much you can do in those hours that you work in. All right, and it's always been a very, very good formula for being successful, no matter what you're doing.
So obviously it's worked.
5 people, if you had an opportunity to have dinner with you and your beautiful wife, Danielle, 5 other people at the table, dead or alive, that you would enjoy to sit down and dinner. Because see, listen, Pete, all the time people ask me, you know, it must be great to be able to go out with Pete Karmanos. I mean, so if I was asked maybe 10 years ago, you might have been on my list of somebody I want to sit down and have dinner with. Now it's old school, so I... give me
Can
two.
you hear my
Give me
phone
two.
ringing? No, I like, you know, just different people, all right? It's always amazing to me when you sit down and have dinner with somebody that you don't know.
So what you're saying is that most people have a fascinating story.
Yeah, most everybody does.
Yeah.
If you let them talk.
And we want you to talk. What's the most fascinating thread in your story?
Well, it would be, a lot of people are surprised by this, but I was painfully shy as a kid when I was 11 or 12 years old. And my dad made me go work in the restaurant because he wanted me to have to talk to people. All right? So when you're really shy and you really are, you know, put in that position, you generally become a really good listener. And I found out that, you know, like you said, everybody has a fascinating story. People are very open to suggestion if they're having a difficulty making a decision. And it really helped me because it made me a great salesperson. All right. I remember convincing, one time my mother and I were arguing at the restaurant. She was giving me a bad time about the orders, and that some came out wrong, and I said she was wrong. She said, no, you're wrong. So, and then she said, look, it's the middle of lunch, we're busy, get back to work. So I decided that her biggest problem was cooking omelets, because she'd cook them out on the grill. They'd take up a lot of room. So as people came into the restaurant, you know, I remember a couple operators from a Michigan Bell building across the street came in, and I said, you could see that they were not sure what they wanted to order. I said, the Western omelets are great today. I'll have that. Anyways, went on and on and on, and I got about 10 omelets out of 11 customers. Pretty soon my mother came racing around. Peter, what the hell is going on? And I said, Did I have those orders right or wrong?
Did you get in trouble for that?
Oh, she threw something at me. Yeah.
So, well, I want to ask, you seem, by all appearances, to have everything. I mean, you look great for your age. You're an impeccable dresser. You have a beautiful wife, wonderful family, successful business. You seem to have been in control of everything, even when you got pushed back from those you supported. What's the one thing that you're missing?
Hair.
That's it?
Hair and a daughter.
Hair and a daughter.
Hair and a daughter.
That's
right.
it? But do you feel like there's something missing, or are you comfortable?
No,
with
that's one of the rewards. There's a lot of bad stuff that goes along with getting older. But one of the rewards is you start to understand how good you have it, and don't regret a thing, and comfortable.
Okay.
I'd like to get a boat big enough for a helicopter to land on, but other than that,
Come on, what are we waiting for? Let's do it.
What's your take on the political landscape these days, locally, nationally?
locally, I think things are okay. I'd like our politicians to be a little more progressive in what they're doing. All right, I'd like to see them push a little harder on getting hundreds of thousands of more people living in the city. But I understand the problems associated with that. On a national level, I think I share the views of most everybody else that I think Washington is disconnected, totally disconnected. And it seems like when somebody ends up in the White House or ends up in the Senate, they forget about the rest of the world that's revolving around them. All right, and so I think with what you see with Donald Trump and Dr. Carson is the reaction. People saying, "Yeah, let's bring somebody else in because this thing is not working."
Have you ever considered a career in politics?
No, because I put my foot in my mouth the first time I'd have to.
Well, it seems to be working for Donald Trump.
I know, right?
Well, he's just tapped into that frustration that I think almost everybody has. I mean, we're living in the age of absurdity. All right, immigration policy is absurd. The tax system's absurd. Healthcare is absurd. You can go on. The drug laws in this country are totally absurd. Do you know why some of these drugs are illegal?
Why?
Because they decided in 1907 to ban opiates. Up until then, people were treated the same way as you treated alcohol. But we had a bunch of Chinese people building the Intercontinental Railroad, and every once in a while they wouldn't show up to work because they were smoking dope. All right? So we wrote a law, made it against the law. Now we have millions of people incarcerated. Most all the violence that's occurring in the world today, in the U.S. especially, is drug-related.
Are you suggesting that drugs should be legalized?
I suggest that drugs should be decriminalized. How's that?
Okay.
All right, all of them.
That was my next
All of
question.
them.
Is it
Not
certain drugs?
Just not just marijuana. All of them. All right. We got the worst one of the bunch legal.
Alcohol?
Alcohol.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm a
But
jump
they're not. Nobody's allowed to really talk about that. I've suggested that to the last three Republican candidates for president. Well, don't ever say that in public.
Do you think that's something that will ever happen, though? I mean, like you said, that's the way it used to be, and it seems that things worked fairly well until a few Chinese smoked a little too much.
Well, let's just take gambling, for example. All right?
Good example.
In the 1950s, if you got caught running a handbook, booking bets, you'd be in a lot of trouble. All right? And the numbers were big. Racetracks were big. all right? Of course, people, they just figured out people weren't going there to see horses race. They're going there to bet money, all right? And now we have legalized gambling, casinos, the state has the lottery, all that stuff. So yeah, things will change.
Let me ask a Chuck question. Where do you get your sense of style? It's amazing.
Thank you. I don't, I just like to put things together that look nice.
Well, you do. Attention to detail. It's work.
And that is something, it's always sort of perplexing to me that you grew up a shy person and still a little shy, but then your views, your opinions, the way you dress, everything is so sort of aggressive and assertive other than your personality. You agree with me on that?
Yeah, but that doesn't have anything to do with being shy.
Okay. All right. Never mind.
You've been interviewed by a lot of people all over the world, top to bottom, and you've been asked a lot of questions. What is the one question that you've never been asked that you'd like to give the answer to?
You mentioned that earlier, so I've been thinking about it. And, the one question, and it really, it's really bothersome, is people assume in a lot of, for a lot of different reasons that, that you had to do things that you didn't want to do to be able to become successful. So the one question I wish they would ask is, did you ever have to compromise your principles or your morals or whatever? And I can say without a doubt that I never had to compromise a thing, all right? And that's very important to me.
That's pretty amazing too, and I'm sure that you've had many opportunities and offers of deals and all kinds of.
Chuck, you know what? The interesting thing is that in 40-some years did millions of dollars of business on handshakes, all right? Early on, we didn't have to have contracts or purchase orders or anything in the high-tech business. I had one guy, one time, early on, the start of CompuWare, we were at Win Schuler's in Marshall, Michigan, and a guy said to me, we were trying to collect a $10,000 bill at that time, and the guy said to me, when my partner got up to go to the men's room, he said, you probably collect that $10,000 real easily if you help me with $3,000 I need on this new house. I was sitting there, I was eating, and I looked at him and I said, when Al gets back here, I'm not going to mention that you asked me that, and you are not going to see $3,000 from me. That was the one time that I ever was asked.
Karen just asked what question you have never been asked that you would like to answer. Now we're kind of wondering, is there a question that you get often that you're sick of or that you don't like to answer?
You could make that plural. There's lots of questions you get that after a time you just don't feel like answering anymore.
Give us a couple.
Questions about Kwame Kilpatrick. All right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the way, we have a guy sitting in jail for how many years?
28.
28 years, and exactly what did he do? No, exactly. What did he do? Did they catch him taking money or anything else? So I'd ask people not to ask me any questions unless they want to hear my opinion about what was going on around that.
You want to share?
Share what?
You want to share your opinions what went on around that?
I don't know. I can't figure it out. I worked with Kwame. When he left office, by the way, we did more work with the city of Detroit than we were doing in Kwame's case. I know when I would drift out this way, I'd have some people that would ask me some questions about Kwame that generally would almost start a fight. All right, but as far as I was concerned, he was maybe his own arrogance got him in trouble, okay? But that's the only thing that he did wrong, as far as I'm concerned.
Does it concern you that, you're kind of a controversial person?
Really?
In the public eye, yes. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that you don't have much filter. It just kind of, what comes up, comes out. I mean, and I know you think about it before you say it, I assume. I'm hoping you do.
You're giving me too much credit.
But at the same time, I have found that's why a lot of people don't like you so much, Pete.
Really?
How does that make you feel? Does that concern you at all?
I could care less.
Okay.
All right. Some people think that everything should be politically correct. All right, and they're the ones that suffer the death of 1,000 cuts. All right. All right. I think that if you don't like me because you don't like my opinions, God bless you. All right.
Well, there you have it. The Social Discussion #1 with Peter Karmanos Jr. and my co-host, Karen Dumas. See you next time.